Wow, we got a wild bunch in here today. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our Sunday morning service, or whenever you choose to watch this. But if you are watching today, it is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Just like most people's Valentine's Day, it doesn't always end up looking the way that you think it should look or the way you want it to look. It's a day that can have a whole bunch of expectations and sometimes some great surprises, sometimes a little bit of disappointments. And today's probably looks a little different than you thought. If you looked out your window and you are in Nanaimo, you would have thought that you woke up in Winnipeg this morning. There is so much snow, and but we're just so grateful to be able to still connect with you this way on the live stream. And if you don't know me, my name is Chantalle. I am one of the pastors here on staff and have been for quite some time. I don't want to age myself, so I won't tell you how long. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about marriage in this series that we're in called Survival Guide. Marriage is a passion topic of mine, just an interest that I've had for a very, very long time. I've only been married 9.5 years. That's a long time. We were like, no. Oh, no. I think it's 8.5. Oh, no. We were married in 2012. I think it's 8.5. I'm not sure. But anyways, we've been married for a while, not quite a decade. I'll figure it out before our tenure. And to my awesome hubby, Edgar. And actually, our first date was on Valentine's Day. I remembered this morning while I was driving here to church today. On Valentine's Day back in 2009. So, woo, I know, it's so long ago. Darcy's making fun of me. Him, along with many of you watching, probably are like, haha, she's so cute. I've been married longer than she's been alive. And that is also probably very true. Yes, and if you have been, that's awesome. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. And you are already just not the norm. Like I said, I love marriage, and I always have. I was not the little girl that grew up planning her wedding. A lot of little girls do that, and they plan their dresses and all those things. I was not that girl. I was a weird girl. I didn't plan my wedding, but I did, in fact, plan my marriage. To me, that was the most important piece. My parents' marriage, when I was little, it's a lot different now, but when I was little, it was probably in the toughest season that it had faced. And with it, there was just so many stresses. There was medical issues, there was health issues, all sorts of stuff going on at home. And there was just a lot of conflict. And it took a toll on them. And I don't want to share anything else because it's their story to tell and not mine. But needless to say, I do remember. I wonder if they remember. Hopefully not. But I remember thinking one day, I must have been like in grade 4 or something. We were doing this assignment in school, and people were talking about their families. And I realized that I was probably only one out of like 4 kids in like a 30-person class whose parents were still married. Everyone else had gotten divorced or weren't together. And I thought that was really cool, but then also started to feel like, oh, I'm the minority. And because there was so much conflict at home, I remember going home once and telling my parents, you guys should just get a divorce. And I was dead serious because I thought that, a divorce, everyone else's parents got divorced, and a divorce would finally end the conflict that was happening at home. At the time, I didn't really understand the other effects that could have on me growing up. And thankfully, they did not take my grade 4 advice. My parents did not get a divorce. And 44 years later, they are still married. And God has done a crazy, tremendous work in their lives, in their marriage in particular, and totally transformed their marriage. And I've seen that firsthand. But firsthand, I have seen that good marriages don't just happen. they aren't a guarantee just because two people love each other and say I do on their wedding day. And unfortunately, good marriages don't just happen because you're Christian either. And chances are, you know some marriages that have struggled, whether or not they're Christian or not. Because marriage can be really difficult. It can be really challenging. And there are so many complex pieces to marriage. It is the most complex human relationship that any of us will ever have. There's just so many variables and so many parts to it. And so I learned, if I knew that good marriages don't just happen, they don't just happen if you're Christian, but I knew deep down since I was a little girl that this was really important to me. And I really, really, really wanted a great marriage one day. I really, really, really wanted a lasting love one day. That I decided to go to what I knew to do at the time. I observed couples that I admired their relationships from. I asked them questions. And then at the ripe old age of 14, when I started getting into reading a lot, I started reading marriage books. Thinking that would give me a great head start. And I did learn a lot. I do not regret reading marriage books at 14. But and especially, I even read books like Wild at Heart by John Eldredge, because that was all about a man and how the man's mind and works and all that they need. And I thought, I have no brothers. I don't really have a good upper hand in this area. I have 4 sisters. They've taught me nothing about men. And so, I just wanted to get my hands on anything that I could to help prepare me for marriage, because this has been just such an important part of my life from a very young age. Well, those books were awesome, but really being in a marriage is what teaches you the most. Walking with people who are in marriage teaches you even more. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way, or that I've learned by watching other people along the way. And I think it's safe to say that every single one of us who desire to be married or who are married desire a lasting love. We desire a lasting marriage and a satisfying one. No one wants to be miserably married for the rest of their life. If we did, no one would sign up to get married. It just wouldn't happen. No one goes to the altar expecting things to crash and burn only a few years later. I believe that we all generally want it to work out. We all do. We wouldn't sign up for this if we didn't, and if we didn't believe that it actually could. Yet, divorce rates of nearly 50%, take her a little less or a little more, tells us otherwise. I will once again admit, marriages are tricky. They are the most complex human relationship, and there's so many variables to them. I really like books like The 5 Love Languages that I read as a teenager, and I reread later on. But what I find is that most marriages need more than that. We need more than just what's in that one book. Even though that book's great and has great advice, most of us could be in marriages that are still struggling, even if we read that book and even if we applied that book. There's just more going on. And I don't want to pretend to solve your marriage issues today. I won't be able to. But I hope to leave you with some stuff to think about. And if applied, it could absolutely benefit your marriage and at least start to make a difference in it. So no matter your personality type, whether you're a man or a girl, what number you have on the Enneagram, anyone else a number 7? Hey-o, Enneagram 7, if you don't. Okay, there's not a lot of people here. They don't know it. There we go, okay. Doesn't matter if you're married or you hope to be one day. And actually, I really tried to be careful with some of this stuff. Even if you're not married and you don't even intend to be one day, this stuff will benefit you. And so I want to I want us to turn to the Bible. The Bible has some great advice when it comes to marriage. And like Pastor Darcy shared the last 2 weeks, sometimes there's verses in the Bible that are so powerful and will absolutely impact and change your marriage if they're applied. But because they're not always written in a marriage context, we don't always think to apply it to our marriages. And this verse that I want to highlight for us today and hang out on is most likely one of them. This was a favorite verse of mine as a teenager, but it meant something a little different back then than it means to me now. But it spared me a lot of heartache as a teenager. And my prayer for you guys today is that it will help spare you guys from a lot of heartache also. The verse I'm going to share is an old proverb that may have been written thousands of years ago, but it filled with so much wisdom then, and it is filled with so much wisdom now. And so the verse is Proverbs 4, verse 23. And the NIV version says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows out of it. I also like the way the NLT says it, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. I'm just going to read it again for you to really let that sink in. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. The Bible refers to the heart hundreds of times throughout the Bible, and according to the Bible Project, I was watching some videos of it this week, the meaning of the heart in Hebrew was a little different from what we may know it as. The Israelite writers had no recollection of the brain, or at least not a word for it. They thought all intellectual activity takes place in the heart. That's where you know things, where you understand, where you make connections, where you have thoughts, and where you make your decisions. From the book of Proverbs, wisdom is found in the heart. And that's why there's other verses like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. The heart is where you think and you make sense of the world, and where you feel your emotions. The term broken heart actually does come from ancient biblical history, Hebrew. And in Hebrew, to be happy, this is considered to be good of heart. The heart is also where you make choices that are motivated by your desires. In the book of Proverbs, it is regularly referred to as the center of one's inner life. And this is the place where we put our orientation towards God. So, this place from which a person does their thinking, where they have their feelings, where they make their decisions, this place, it says to guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And when something starts with the line in front, above all else, I just can't help but take note of that, okay? Because Solomon wrote Proverbs, or a lot of Proverbs. He has a lot of things to say, and he talks a lot about a lot of, really smart things and, things that can make a big difference in your life. And then he says, above all else. And when I read that, I think, meaning before you go prioritizing everything else I've said, even though he had a lot of good things to say, this here is very important. This here is very significant. This here, you should probably underline, exclamation mark, highlight, and put an asterisk. Can't say that word. Asterisk, the star thing, beside it, okay? Because this here, this is really important. Because we need to guard our heart. Why? Because everything you do flows out of it. Some of you are thinking, okay, that all sounds good and dandy, but what does it actually mean to guard your heart? And how do I protect it? To guard means to protect, to keep watch over. It's an active thing. It's not a passive role. It's an active role. And how do we do that? That verse made a lot of sense to me as a teenage girl. I pretty much, if I could get a tattoo at the time, it would have been one I would have, got tattooed on me. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows out of it. And literally, I just thought of it as like, Chantalle, don't date a bunch of boys and give your heart away to everyone because, just guard your heart. And it spared me a lot of trouble. But it means more than just that. And it means something different in a marriage context. And I apologize for the corny analogy, but this came to me while I was thinking about the sermon last week while I was driving my car. And so, but I think it fits. When you think of how do you guard your heart, how do you protect your heart, what I like to think of is, well, how do you prevent your car from breaking down? Okay? In order to help your car not break down, you do routine maintenance. You don't only work on your car because your tranny broke or your engine quit. It's a little too late then. No, you don't want it to get to that point. So instead, you do regular and routine maintenance. You make sure it's running properly. You put gas in it. You go into the oil change. You change the filters and all the other things that mechanics do and I don't. Okay? And you do that to prevent it from breaking down. And the same goes for our heart. Our heart needs regular and routine maintenance. Why wait for a big breakdown? Why wait until we need a whole engine rebuild of our hearts or of our marriage before we do anything with it? Sure, it can feel inconvenient sometimes. Oh, I don't have time to make that oil change appointment. Oh, I don't have time to stop for gas. But you will find out soon enough. You really should have made the time because the inconvenience factor of when you don't far outweighs that of if you did. And the same goes for your heart. It's not just inconvenience, the inconvenience, the pain, the loss that it can cause if you don't tend to your heart. You don't do preventative maintenance along the way, it'll really cost you later. And it'll be more than just a little inconvenient. And so some of us don't realize how much the condition of our hearts actually affects the conditions of our marriage. Did you hear that? The condition of our heart absolutely affects the condition of our marriage. Sometimes we don't always like to hear that, but it's true. Because our hearts, if what's in our hearts is gonna come out of us, that's gonna come out onto the people closest around us. And that's gonna come out onto our families. And that's gonna come out onto our spouses. And that's gonna come out, even onto our kids. But if we have things inside of our heart that have been stored up, if we have undealt with grief, if we have hurt, if we have bitterness, if we have resentment, if we have, unforgiveness, if we have contempt, all those things have a way of leaking out of us. And so, unfortunately, we are in a time, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're in a time, what Pastor Darcy has said, it is, COVID right now is a pressure cooker for marriages. Issues that are happening are, everything's just being magnified and speeding up, and everything is getting bigger and bigger and bigger for marriages. And that's why there's just so many right now that are suffering and struggling. And I've known just through the research and stuff that I've read and people that I've talked to, I also know that a really difficult time in a lot of married couples' lives is when your kids are little. That is a really, really, really common time for people to express marital unsatisfaction or dissatisfaction. It's a really hard time for a lot of couples. And for obvious reasons, you're sleep deprived, you have little humans that depend on you for everything, and you're just caring so much for them and keeping them alive and, trying to make them turn out great. That there's not always a lot of extra energy left for yourself or for your spouse. And it's just if you look at the statistics, it's a really, really, really common time for people to struggle in their marriage. And I say that because I just want to normalize it for any of you that may have young kids and may be in a challenging season or feeling that you're bumping up against your spouse so much more than you used to. And you're starting to wonder, man, is this really the person that I married? Like, I don't remember this. Yes, they are the person that you married. They are the person that you love. And you guys are just both under considerably more stress than you used to be. And that's normal, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that, there's no hope for you to get to a place of marital satisfaction, but sometimes just normalizing the situation helps giving your marriage the hope that it needs to then pursue that. And so that's what I'm hoping you get from that today, is that it's okay, and there's still things that you guys can do. It'll take extra effort, and it'll take extra intentionality, but it'll be worth it. And I just want to challenge you. And so the parents with young kids, mixed with parents that are in a pandemic, I anticipate that there's a lot of marriages that have just such overwhelming amounts of stress and pressures on their lives right now. And what is leaking out of them and what is coming out of their marriage, they're not happy with. And but I just want you guys to know that it doesn't mean that you guys are done for. And it doesn't mean that you guys are over just because you guys are in a really hard place right now. And I want to encourage you to fight for your marriage because it is worth it. And so there was an article I was reading about COVID and marriage and the pandemic and all this stuff and what's happening. And one marriage therapist says that right now, so even if you don't have young kids, right now, a lot of people just have so much extra anxiety. There's just so much extra anxiety. And what's happening is because there's not a lot of the same outlets that you would normally have, to go out, hang out with friends and all those things, is that anxiety then is easily misplaced, and couples are taking out their anxiety or their fears or their worries on each other because they're just really struggling with that. And so when I hear things like that, it just makes me kind of feel sad because I feel like a lot of the times there's issues in people's lives that feel like marriage issues because they're issues that impact the marriage. But from other people looking in, you can see that those issues aren't necessarily marriage issues. There's things going on inside individual people's hearts that they're struggling with and that they're going through, and it's being taken out on the marriage, or it's being masked as a total marriage issue. And so this is where the number one thing that I want you guys to get from this, I have several points, but I want you guys to ask yourself, how is your heart doing? What is coming out of my heart? And how is my heart doing? If you ask that question honestly and you answer it honestly, it can show you and highlight so many things that can help prevent a lot of damage down the road in your relationship. And so my first point is guarding your heart means paying attention to your emotions. It's paying attention to what is going on inside of you. We have been working through a series with Area 57 called Moods. We just wrapped it up, and it's all about naming and managing our emotions. And our preteens have totally taken it, and they have just loved it. And there's been some really cool stories that have come out of it. And we've been just talking about naming our emotions, figuring out what's behind the emotion, knowing that there's more than just 4 primary emotions: anger, sad, mad. No, that's like the same. Happy and something else. Like there's actually so much more. And we went into like tons of things with them, and they just totally got it and they loved it. And one of the big things that we emphasized is inviting Jesus into your emotions, but also not ignoring them, because emotions, even when they're considered not the happy emotions, they're not bad emotions. They're just an indicator of something going on that we need to pay attention to. They are the engine light that shows up on your car dashboard that you want to show up You need that engine light to show up, because otherwise you're going to end up keep driving and drive your car into the road and not realize that you have a problem there. It's the gas light that shows up in your car display that says, hey, Chantalle, on the way here, you have 39 kilometers left. I'm beeping at you, low fuel, please fill me up before you get stuck in a snowdrift, okay? You want those things to show up because it's gonna prevent a bigger thing from happening down the road, and that's exactly what our emotions do. They're not wrong, they're not bad, they just are indicators of what is going on. And these little preteens, they grasped this, they got it. And it was funny because one of them, I told them that I was preaching on Valentine's Day in our big church about marriage, and an 11-year-old boy literally said, oh man, you need to tell them about what we've been learning. I think that it'll really make a difference in their marriage. And I laughed so hard, and I was like, man, if you, 11-year-old boy, can get this, why can't we adults get this sometimes? And so when we stuff our emotions, picture it or ignore our emotions, saying they're not there. I'm not really angry. I'm not really upset about this. You know, when we do that, it's as if your engine light came on and you put a piece of cardboard over your car dash thinking, if I don't see it, it ain't real, right? If I don't see it, it ain't real. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't help you. And so some of us just keep putting the cardboard on, the blinders on, hoping that if we just ignore this and don't acknowledge it, that it won't, it won't cause us any issues, but chances are it will cause an even bigger issue. So guarding your heart means paying attention to your emotions and asking yourself, how is my heart doing? And like I said, our marriage relationships are so much more challenging and complex than any other human relationship we have. It's because they're the most intimate, and they have, just incredible capabilities of being the most rewarding, most amazing gift that you've ever received, okay? But something that kind of goes along with this, but I put it as my second point, guarding your heart looks like dealing with your baggage. And Toni Nieuwenhof, in her book that Darcy said the last 2 weeks, we're going to keep saying it because it's a really good book. So Toni Nieuwenhof, she is married to a popular pastor in Canada. She was a divorce attorney or something like that. And anyway, she writes this book out of a place with her family law background, as a pastor's wife, and also as someone who very vulnerably and candidly shares about how difficult her marriage was and how close she got to ending it. And it's just such a refreshing read, which is kind of weird, but I actually really enjoyed this book, and I learned a lot from it. It was different than a lot of other marriage books that I read, and it's called Before You Split. And so, but that title right away, I even thought to myself, oh, am I gonna get something out of it? I'm not planning on splitting. I like my marriage. And, but even if you don't, you're not at that place where you're like, thinking about quitting on your marriage, it is a great book, and there's just so much gold in it. And if you are thinking of quitting your marriage, please read this book first. Please, please, please read this book. And so anyways, in her book, she refers to this baggage as mud. That's her terminology, and I really liked it. And unfortunately, we all have mud on us. We all have emotional baggage. And no one likes that term, emotional baggage, and some of us like to pretend we don't have it. But that's not true. And we all have it. I'm gonna normalize this also. We all have baggage. Maybe we should just all say it together. It's like some sort of special class. 1, 2, 3. I have baggage. I have baggage. There you go. No one likes saying that. That's weird. That doesn't feel good. Just kidding. But it's true. Whether we like it or not, we all have baggage. And our baggage sometimes mixes with our spouse's baggage. And then it just makes like an awesome amount of baggage. But there's just things that have, what people don't understand is that some people think, well, if I came from a great family and if I came from seeing a great marriage, why am I struggling in mine? Or why is this happening? And there are so many things that happens to a person by the time they get to be 20 years old or 30 years old that is more than just watching their parents' marriage. There's so many things that happens to someone. And, this could be things that have happened, yes, absolutely, from their parents. There could be things that have happened at school with being bullied. There could have been things that have happened in past relationships that they've had, which have left their mark. And a lot of this baggage, if a different word for it could just be undealt with pain or unresolved issues. Okay? And so these are things that have just left a little bit of a heavier mark on you that sometimes could be cause a little bit of a hot button reaction out of you. Could be considered a trigger for you. And so some of these examples, I'll give you it in case you're not aware of this. Some of us grew up in homes where maybe we never felt good enough, or we always felt compared to our sibling. And then when we get in squabbles with our spouse, it just reinforces that record that plays in our heads. See, they think you're not good enough either. Some of us grew up in homes where we didn't feel appreciated, and now we're in a home, and when things are hard or, we feel like we're getting unnoticed, then right away our go-to is, they don't appreciate me. Okay, some of us grew up feeling lonely, and we thought that getting married would fix that, but instead we find ourselves still battling those feelings of isolation all these years later. Some of us grew up turning to substances or pornography because before we were married to numb and escape pain, and then we're surprised when we fall back into it even after we're married. Some of us grew up always feeling like a failure, and then every time our spouse tells us something we need to work on or something that's bothering them, it's like they're saying, see, you really are a failure. Some of us have always felt like our guardians blamed us for things, and then now when our partner brings up an issue or concern to us, our defense instantly goes up because we feel attacked and blamed, yet once again, we're always getting blamed. Some of us grew up in homes where there was lots of fighting and yelling, and now the second we see our spouse's anger, we're triggered back to that fearful state we were as a child. These examples are all our baggage talking. We all have it. Maybe yours was mentioned, or maybe yours looks different. And maybe it was caused by something else, but we all carry it. And so a way to guard your heart and a way to guard your marriage is to realize that, to accept it, and then to deal with it. To deal with it. So, I think that, I think for this one, I just want to shout out, it's not in my notes, but I'm just going to say it. This one, that dealing with your baggage thing, a lot of us can't do this alone. The majority of us can't do this one alone. And sometimes what's really difficult is trying to deal with our baggage that would still come into our marriage or any marriage, doesn't matter who we married, didn't matter what choice we made down the road, we still went into that marriage with that baggage. And it would be in any marriage that we've ever had or would have. And so sometimes it can get really convoluted when we try to process that with our spouse because they're the ones triggering the reaction and the baggage. And so sometimes it can feel like, sometimes they can get on the defense too because they feel like they're causing this or whatever. And we, it's easy to kind of blame them and whatnot. So most of us need an outside party to help process our baggage and to deal with our baggage and to get healed from our baggage. And for some of us, that's gonna look like, just talking to a mentor, maybe someone who has walked, something similar out and healed from it. Some of us, it's gonna be talking to a really good friend that is just, really knowledgeable and has great advice. But for a lot of us, this is gonna look like sitting in a counselor's office. And it's gonna be opening up and being real and just saying, hey, we got some issues happening in our marriage. We're bumping up against each other a lot. And I think I'm starting to realize that this part, even though it's affecting my marriage, this part's a me issue that keeps coming up because of something that I might have gone through or something a false belief I have about myself that I need help with, and counselors are trained in this. There's great ones out there, and they can really, 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 really help you. And so that's all I'm going to say about that one. And number 3, I think guarding your heart looks like combating against comparison. Combating against comparison. The way I was actually tempted to explain this one was guard against negative attitudes towards your spouse and criticism, which is also good, not very nice. It doesn't sound as nice. But when I was actually thinking about the issue of, people being really negative towards their spouse or being really critical towards their spouse, I actually noticed that a lot of times those things come from comparison. And so a lot of times, we just live in such a comparative culture right now. Like, it's insane how easy it is to compare your life to someone else's, your home mess to someone else's home mess, your kids to someone else's kids, your wife to someone else's wife, your husband to someone else's husband. It's just with social media, that just has been ramped up completely. And Andy Stanley says, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. It will steal your joy from your relationships because it takes away the mentality of, a lot of times it takes away, what you're appreciative of, and instead it points out to you the lack that person might have. And so I have often, heard people say when they're struggling in their marriages or, they're thinking it's the end of their marriage, like, they're just like, I just think that the grass is greener on the other side. And I've always irked that saying. I really struggle with it. And then one day I was on social media and I saw someone post this, and it was a response to that little grass is greener on the other side. It says, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And I believe that is the case for a lot of people's marriages. I can't say every marriage because, again, some are very, very complex and there's other things involved. But I believe that some of us, instead of comparing our spouse, the energy that it takes to compare our spouses or compare our relationship or, our families, if we took that energy and we put it into watering our homes, watering our marriages, watering our families, I think we would reap a great reward. We would reap a great reward. A neighbor of mine, he is an elderly man, and at the beginning, his wife had been battling cancer for a year and a half or so, pretty bad, so we didn't see her very much. But a couple months into COVID, we have a fence that's falling over and breaking down. So whether you want to talk to anyone, you're talking to your neighbors when you go outside, because there they are. Just kidding, we like talking to our neighbors. But so one night we went out and our neighbor came out to let out his dog out, and we let our dog out, and we were talking to them like we always do, talking to him. And I said, hey, how's it going? And he said, oh, I've been better. And I said, oh, what's wrong? And he said, we lost, and said her name. I lost my wife today. And so she had lost, oh dear, didn't think this was gonna happen. She had lost her battle with cancer, and a couple months into COVID. And I just was so shocked. I wasn't expecting him to say that night. And I didn't know what to do other than listen. And he started telling me, he's like, we've been married 40 years, and great years. We had hard times and things, we struggled and stuff, but we've been married 40 years. And he just starts going on and telling me about what they did in their life and the adventures that they had and the places that they lived and the things they liked to do together and the things that she was good at. And I could not help but sob as this man told me with such admiration and such fondness about his dear wife of 40 years and how he just couldn't picture not being with her because he just loved being with her. And I just sat over the fence. I felt like an idiot because I'm like, I'm crying harder than he is. But I was weeping and weeping. And so we finished talking and I went and sat down trying to talk to Edgar, and he's like, what is wrong? And I just kept crying and kept crying. I was like, Edgar, that love, that kind of lasting love is just so beautiful. And I was just so touched. I'm like, I'm sure his wife was not perfect. I'm sure that she, made mistakes along the way. She was not a perfect person. But that is not at all what he was focusing on. All he could remember was the good things about her, the things he was going to miss about her, the things he loved about her. And I just said to Edgar, I don't ever want to wait until I don't have you to think of you like that. We don't have to wait until we don't have someone to appreciate them. And comparison eats up that joy that we can have with our spouse. It eats up, that appreciation that we have for them. And so, yes, guarding your heart looks like combating against comparison. And I'm just going to wrap up the last 2 points really quickly here. Guarding your heart also looks like being careful of who you let influence your marriage. Be careful of who you let influence your marriage. Some of us, there may be TV shows that we watch or movies that we watch or novels that we read that just have really weird, bizarre views of marriage that aren't healthy, that aren't biblical, and that aren't good for us. If you find yourself reading these or listening to these, watching these shows, and then afterwards you start, struggling in your marriage a bit or thinking weird things, chances are it's influencing your marriage and it's not good. It's not helpful to you. And the verse that comes to mind when I was, preparing this was 1 Corinthians 10:23. It says, all things are lawful, that is morally legitimate, permissible, but not all things are beneficial or advantageous. All things are lawful, but not all things are constructive to character and edifying. So other versions say, all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. And so you need to ask yourself that. Who's influencing my marriage? Who am I letting into my marriage? And is it helping my marriage or is it hindering my marriage? And this also goes for the types of people that we open up to about our marriage. And so if we find that we go and hang out with a group of coworkers and they're all bashing their spouses and, talking poorly about their marriage, or the grass is greener somewhere else, chances are those aren't the people that you want to open up to about your marriage. If you have a girlfriend or girlfriends that you get together with, and every single time you open up to them, or guy friends, doesn't matter. I know it's harder for guys sometimes, but, open up about your marriage, and then their response is, oh man, what a dud. Just leave him. Or, that's not helpful to you. That's actually not, even if you feel like, oh, they empathize with me, it's not beneficial to you. It's not beneficial to your marriage, and that's not actually someone that you should be opening up to about your marriage. But I do believe that everyone should open up to someone. I think we just need to be very careful of who we let in, because everyone needs someone to talk to and process and just hear a different perspective of. But who we open up to, we need to choose people that are rooting for our marriage, who care for our marriage, who believe in our marriage, and who want the best for our marriage. If they don't fit that classification, they're not the ones. They're not the ones. They're not worth it. They could do more damage than good. And number 13, I'm sorry if I come across a little bit, tell you what to do. I'm used to talking to preteens and teenagers. So you guys are adults and you're older than me. Take this with a grain of salt. Just kidding. My last point is, another way of guarding your heart and guarding your marriage is by praying together and by praying for your marriage. And so many of us know that prayer is powerful and prayer changes things, but sometimes we underestimate it when it comes to our marriage. And prayer has a potential of unifying us. It has a potential of softening our hearts. And it invites Jesus into our marriage. And this doesn't have to be fancy at all. I think sometimes people get overwhelmed, like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to pray in front of my spouse. I don't know what to pray. This could just be something simple like, Jesus, help us. Jesus, we need you. Jesus, we're stuck. We don't know what to do. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be long or elaborate, but the studies actually show that even though divorce rates are approximately every 1 in 2 person, it says for couples that pray together, it actually changes the statistics so drastically that it then becomes 1 in 1,000, the divorce rate. So you go from 1 out of 2, which is too often, to 1 out of 1,000 or more. There's another study I read that said 1,100, but I'm just going to be conservative. Okay, so 1 in 1,000. I would like to give my marriage that kind of odds, if I could. That's pretty incredible. And if you're not married yet, I challenge you to pray for your future spouse, to pray for your marriage, to pray for, God, what is it that you need to do in me now to help prepare me for marriage? Because a lot of us, most of us, go into marriage completely unprepared. Completely unprepared. And here's a little bonus thought for you. This is not one of my points, but I just really want to highlight it for you. Make room for fun in your marriage. Make room for fun in your marriage. In our culture, marriages can be totally time-starved, and we just get stuck with to-do lists and kids and errands and all this stuff. And, now we're stuck at home so often, and life is mundane and not exciting. It's just easy to get into ruts. But Proverbs 17:22 says, "A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." And another version says, "Laughter is medicine for the soul." Okay? And so I think that laughter can also be medicine for our marriages. It can be healing for our marriages. It can do tremendous work in our marriages. But so some of us need to, and it may not seem fun at first, but schedule fun things to do with your spouse so that it creates room for you guys to have more fun in your marriage. And us as a church, we actually have something that we want to do to help equip your marriage, to better your marriage, and to hopefully invest in your marriage. And it comes with a little bit of this is the fun factor part, because some of you guys are like, make room for fun? I don't even know where to start. We want to help you. And so the hosts on the chat, they will post a link, and it's on our website, generations.ca. You can sign up with your spouse for a date night bag. And the date night bag, if you fill it up, or if you fill out the information, we will make one for you. And it'll be available to you for the Thursday, I believe it's the February 24th, for you to pick up, for you to take home, and for you to have fun with your spouse as a date night, okay? So this is not the thing that you invite all the kids to, okay? This is after the kids go to bed, or before you get too tired if you don't have kids at home. This is the thing that you schedule and make time for, your date night bags, and we'll give it to you for free. We don't care how many we have to make. We just really believe in marriages, and we really want to invest in yours. And so some of you guys may have a lot of thoughts going in your head about some things that I've talked about. Maybe you're thinking, man, I need to find new people to speak into my marriage. Maybe some of you are thinking, oh man, I really need some help processing the baggage and the mud that I'm facing. Or I need help just even being real with my emotions because I've never done that before and I don't know how. And so if you choose to go with to go and find a counselor, I think that's an awesome step. I do not believe in waiting till things are completely broken and devastated before going to see a counselor. My counselor says they like me because I always come when nothing's really that bad. And they ask me why I'm coming, and I say, because I don't want anything to get that bad. And they're like, you're my favorite type of client. It's not huge crises because I like to go before it gets to that point. And so I just want to challenge some of you guys to do that. And just find someone that you both feel comfortable with, you both feel a connection with, and you'll know within the first session whether or not they are the right fit for you. And if you're, and I just want to encourage some of you who really have wanted to go to counseling for a long time and your spouse is unwilling or not there yet, I'm going to still tell you, you should go. And the reason being, I have a mentor who's a marriage and family therapist who has been one for decades. And she told me that back in the day, counselors used to say that when one spouse went to a counseling appointment and they came alone, that they would call it divorce counseling. And then they started to realize that that wasn't true at all. And she said to me this quote that I'll never forget. She said, marriage is like a dance. If one person changes their footwork, the whole dance can change. The whole dance can change. And that doesn't mean we control our spouse. We cannot control our spouses. We can only control what we do. But sometimes when we make a change, it changes the whole dynamic. So I want to encourage some of you guys to do that if you need to do that. And just remember We're gonna start a song right away, okay? And it's called "God's So Good." God's so good, He never gives up on me. And I just want to encourage you guys that God is so good that He's not going to give up on you. He's not going to give up on your marriage. Don't give up on Him. Don't give up on your marriage, please. Jesus is healer, and He can take very broken things and make them new. He can take very damaged things and make them beautiful again. If He can raise people from the dead, He can raise the parts of your marriage that has felt dead. Jesus is healer, and He brings life. And I believe that Jesus wants to heal marriages today. And I believe that Jesus wants to change hearts today. And I believe that Jesus wants to bring life into homes today. Jesus is for you. He's for your spouse. He's for your marriage. Jesus, we thank you, Lord. We thank you for your love. We thank you that you care about our hearts and the conditions of it. And Jesus, I just pray that you would just encourage the hearts that are heavy today. You would encourage the hearts that are grieving today. You would encourage the hearts that have just felt so lost and have been struggling so much, Jesus. And I pray, God, that you would just breathe your hope onto them, God. We just pray, Jesus, that you would change hearts. I just pray for anyone, spouse or person listening who has just been hard, whose heart has been hardened. Jesus, I pray that you would soften it. I pray that you would soften hearts, God, that you would bring walls down in Jesus' name. Walls would come down in Jesus' name. And I pray that you would restore. And I pray that you would heal. And I pray that you would touch lives, God. Touch lives, God. We thank you, Jesus. We thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Arms that place me on the rock that stands. I hold true to the one who breaks my fall and lifts me time and time again. Oh my God, so good, you never give up, you never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. Oh my God, so good, you never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. This freedom purchased by the highest price, this grace outweighing all my shame. I'm made new through the power of sacrifice, from death now raised to life again. Oh my God, so good, you never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. Oh my God, so good, you never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. I'm not a slave to sin, so I'm singing, you are good. Buried with Christ to rise in your freedom. You are good. When you make a promise, Jesus, you keep it. You are good. So I'll praise your name as long as I'm breathing. You are good. I'm not what joy I found because of your love for me. Oh my God, so good. You never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. I'm not a slave to sin, so I'm singing. You are good. Buried with Christ to rise in your freedom. You are good. When you make a promise, Jesus, you keep it. You are good. So I'll praise your name as long as I'm singing. You are good. Oh my God, so good. You never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me. Oh my God, so good. You never give up on me. Oh, what joy I found because of your love for me.
Thank you so much for joining with Generations Church and our worship experience today. If you need prayer, our hosts would love to pray with you. You can just press the prayer button and they will just stay online for a little while longer. And may God bless you and your families this week in whatever season you find yourself in. Take care.